Hey, I'm back. I'm going to show you how to make this awesome convertible car cake out of Rice Krispy Treats and fondant. And there's a lot of details, and I know it looks like a lot, but I'm going to break it down for you step by step to show you how I did everything. And you, of course, can make adjustments depending on what car you're making. And, you know, it's going to look really awesome. You could change this up to do it out of cake if you needed to or wanted to. I had to ship this somewhere, so I had to do it out of Rice Krispy Treats. But the same techniques apply to pretty much whatever you're doing. So as you can see, there are pretty much all the details that you would see on the actual car, and that's what I was going for. So we'll show you how to do all of those details and make them look really awesome on your cake so you can apply them to your cake. All right, let's get started. So the first thing I do is make a template. I download lots of pictures from the internet, and I happen to have an actual pattern for this car cake that was provided to me by the maker of this particular car, Allard Cars, which was really helpful. So after I printed it out, I laid it on top of a piece of cake board, measured out where the wheel wells and everything were going to be, and cut them out, and then directly applied the Rice Krispy Treats on top of the board. And this topper isn't meant to be eaten, otherwise I would probably have covered this board, but for looks only, you know, this works fine. After I make the template, go ahead and start adding in your rice cereal. My rice cereal is very, very simple. I just heat up marshmallows, mini marshmallows, for 30 seconds, stir, 30 seconds, stir, 30 seconds, stir. Varies depending on what microwave you're using, of course. And this pretty much caramelizes, well, not caramelizes, but just makes the marshmallows really, really melted so that when they set, they're very firm. As you can see, I use my template often to refer back to the board to make sure that I'm making the car big enough. I folded down the wheels, since this doesn't have wheels yet, so that my height is accurate. Make sure I've got that curve just right. It takes a lot more than you think it would. And you can always cut away the extra, but if it's too short, it's too short. So definitely make sure you put enough on there. And squeeze and push and make that Rice Krispie firm so that it doesn't smush down when you start adding everything else on. I've cut out the center area where the, I don't know what you would call that, the area you ride in, the inside of the car. I've cut that out with a knife. I use a serrated blade knife. I think it's one of those ninja knives that supposedly cuts pop cans and stuff. Works really good on rice cereal. Cake too. Keep smushing, keep referring. Gotta add more. Now we're getting there. Trying to keep my edges nice and clean. Started to add the wheel wells. Make sure the curve is correct. If you need to make some adjustments, you can just cut that part out. The more care and time you put into making the rice cereal shape perfect, just the better your final product is going to look. Attention to all those details really pays off in the end. So if you rush through this part, it's going to show in your final product. We've got the wheel wells on now. You can see where those are going to be. making sure it's the same on both sides. I'm going to start trimming down the wheel wells, because even though they're there and you can see where they're going to be, they're not very precise right now. So I'm going to actually trim out where that line is so that it's straight and looks nice, especially once it has fondant on top of it. I want that to look really crisp and clean. That's one thing about cars, is they're very specific. And constantly compare one side to the other side. Look at it from the front, from the back, from the side, from the other side, and compare each thing and make sure it looks the same. You're basically trying to reproduce a machine that can do something very specific, and you want to be able to do that or recreate that with just your hands, which takes some time. But the first step is just looking for that. If you don't look, if you don't know what to look for, then you're not going to see it, obviously. So look for imperfections and fix them ahead of time. So we've got that nice clean line there. It doesn't take much. Left side, right side. Looks good. To firm up the rice cereal, I am using royal icing to harden up the rice cereal treats before I add on the fondant to make sure that it's just really, really firm. Like I said, I have to mail this topper out, so it really has to hold together. This is not a necessary step if you were doing this at home, but it does help the fondant look smooth. You know, rice cereal, even after you trim it, it's still kind of bumpy, as you can see. So the royal icing really does a good job of filling in all those little holes and things and makes a nice base for your fondant to lay smooth. Make sure you get in all those little cracks and everything. Do a good job with this part. I use pretty firm royal icing as well. If this was a cake, this would be the part where you would be adding buttercream underneath your fondant, and then I would put this in the fridge to chill before adding fondant. After the icing is sort of set a little bit, usually by the time I finish it's set, I'll take a paintbrush that I only use for this particular thing and get it wet and smooth down all the little bumps so that the car is really, really smooth and ready for fondant. I'll actually add fondant in 2 layers. I'll put one layer down that's very, very thin as the base layer, and then add another layer of fondant to build up some details. I've let the royal icing dry. It just didn't take very long, but here's my thin fondant. I'm going to put on the first layer and just roll that on there. I use marshmallow fondant, and it's very soft and actually works well when it's warm. It's got a nice stretch to it, so it can easily get into those grooves and doesn't tear or crumble or anything like that. Just gently work down from the top down to get into all those little grooves. So now I'm going to put on my second layer of fondant. Think about, when you're doing this, where the seams are going to be. I've only wet the front of the car because I'm going to cut the back part of this fondant to make it fit where the wheel wells are going to be extended. So whenever you're adding fondant on top of fondant and you're going to have seams, plan for where those seams are going to lie so that they look correct and you don't have to try and hide them. They just become part of the car. So right now I'm just making sure there's no bubbles underneath the top part. I mean, this front top part of the car where the hood is the main kind of view. So I want that to look good. I've put a curve at where the back wheel well is going to be. And that's where the seam is going to be. I've left a curve on the back where the back trunk is going to be. Thinking about what I'm doing. Don't cut your fingers. That's definitely a no-no. Cut carefully around the edges to reveal the interior. Nice clean cuts. Use a very sharp X-Acto blade that is clean, and wipe it off with a damp rag every now and then to remove any sugar that's stuck to it. Otherwise your fondant will stick to your blade and make it tear. Obviously only ever use X-Acto blades that you've used for fondant. Don't ever use an X-Acto blade that you've used for non-food related things. Okie dokie, that looks pretty good. Smoothing out some little bumps and bubbles. Trim up the bottom of the car. Just showing you again how I peeled away the back area of the car for where the wheel well was. Before your fondant sets up, we want to add in some details that make a car look like a car, such as where the doors open, any lines in the hood, any of the side holes. We want to do all that into the fondant right now before it dries and cracks. You can use whatever tool you feel comfortable with. There's several types of tools that make this pretty easy. I just kind of hold up the photo and make that first cut. It can be scary. Just go slow. Think about what the angle is that you're going at. Compare how far into the cake you're going to the photo so you don't accidentally do too much. Getting down to eye level also helps you make straight lines up and down. Use rulers if you have to, but you should be able to eyeball straight lines at this point. Do the other side. Compare back and forth often to make sure you are even on both sides. Fix any bulges that your carving has created. I'm using a small ball tool to press in the areas of, I don't even know what these are called. They're like speed holes, that's all I can think. Really cool detail, I guess. I've got a little bubble underneath my fondant here, so I'm going to use an X-Acto knife inside the area that I'm working on to press out the air so that a hole doesn't show. And that's always bound to happen, so no worries. Just continue on. Just take your time. I try to think ahead too how I'm going to achieve a certain look. So I know that I want to put silver around these holes and black on the inside, so they have a lot of depth to them. So I'm making sure that the outside's nice and flat so that when I add the silver it looks good. Okay, you can watch our second video on adding all of the details of the car and the wheels and the interior. So I hope to see you in video 2. Thanks for watching.